there's all the questions of what about allergies for kids and temperament and those kinds of things, and should we get a hypoallergenic dog or should we get a lab or something like that? And speaking with the vet at that clinic, he basically said, there's a couple different breeds that you should go with, but he didn't say you have to go with this one or you have to go with that one. He gave us a couple different options. Labradoodles and Golden Doodles, those are fairly hypoallergenic dogs, so that's kind of a common theme when it comes to therapy dogs, but Wausau does have one that's a lab, so it's not uncommon to have that kind of dog either. We also talked with him about, are there any dog breeders in this area or trainers that we could use? Because Wausau told us who they went with, and that's a great idea, but we wanted to do our due diligence and make sure that there wasn't something right here that we could go with, and so we asked him, and he turned us on to a couple different trainers and some potential dog breeders. Nate contacted them, and really every one of them said, yeah, we do a great job, but not always in this application for what you guys are looking for, and they said whatever Wausau went with is what you guys should go with. And so that is iCanine Services through Extreme, and it's a company out of Alabama that does like an extensive 6-month dog training. They actually find the correct breeds, they train all kinds of different dogs, and then they kind of separate it into, these are your canine dogs that are going to go do drug searches, and these are your military ones, and these are your therapy dogs. And they train them a lot before we even get there, and basically we would have this dog that's completely trained, and then we would send our caretaker down to actually train with that dog and iCanine Services for another 2 to 3 weeks, learning how to care for the dog, how to train it when you're back here, and go through a train-the-trainer class so that they could train other handlers within our buildings. So all of that is encompassed in the training with that service.
So Josh, what I'm hearing you say is that then you send down who would be our resource officer?
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So that was another piece of the puzzle we had to go through, is who's actually going to be the caretaker of the dog and who's going to be the handler. So Nate will talk a little bit more
Who
about
were
that.
the other companies or organizations that you looked at?
I don't have the names exactly down. I have them in my office, but one was 20 grand. There was another one in Illinois. There was another one in Michigan, and the costs were pretty high for those. So this is the cheapest that we would recommend that actually does the job the way it should be done.
And we have first-hand knowledge that they do a good job through our contacts at the hospital.
Canine Patriots from our local area, have you talked with them at all?
Canine Patriots?
Yes.
No, we have not.
No, that's not one.
I have not heard them as a recommendation, actually.
Yep.
Canine Patriots. Okay.
And they're from here, Jess?
Yes, they are. Yep.
Yeah, we'll definitely look
I
into
have
that.
that contact information.
That would be
I
great.
have got a presentation on them,
Okay.
because they do for vets, obviously, and then also therapy dogs, but they are local.
Awesome. Have you heard a lot of good things about it?
In our breed, yes, so they're very specific with their criteria, but they do, that's, I guess, the piece that you have to research a little bit more, is that they do the actual, I'm at a loss for words, not therapy, but the,
They do like the assist,
yes.
pick things up.
Well, I think they do a bunch of things, but they also help with the vets with PTSD, so it is behavioral.
It's interesting to see
So,
that.
but,
When we met with the vet and the different companies around the area, I said, is there anyone close by? Because we'd love to have someone close by.
And maybe he just didn't, he's
Yeah.
never heard of that.
yeah, but I can
Yeah.
have that for you tomorrow.
That would be great.
Okay.
The thing that, besides the price and being $15,000 less than the other people we looked into when we bought the chipmunk dog, was the fact that iCanine has a long history of doing that, and one of their training partnerships is they have all the schools, and the trick to an in-school, as I've learned, therapy dog is that it has to be trained over within 6 months and have a venue, and the trainer has to be taking it into those environments with chaos and kids and craziness going on at all times to be able to have it be effective in that role.
That's
So-
probably the biggest difference, I would say, is one-on-one or one 25 versus when you bring it into middle school, I'll bet you cafeteria, 40 kids are trying to grab this dog.
The golden doodle, I couldn't believe it, in the hallway. So it came in, sat down, kids started coming around, it just laid right down.
It was the laziest dog you've ever seen.
In our 1 hour meeting, it laid on the
He was
floor and
smart,
I
man.
literally thought it was dead because it didn't move for an hour. It just laid there.
So when they pick these dogs, so they bought 3 brothers that were Labradoodles as puppies, and then into Alvin, Simon, and Theodore. We got Theodore, and the healthcare center's getting Alvin. Simon went somewhere else. But they get all these dogs, and it's how aggressive they are. So if they're super high energy, they become drug dogs. And if they're medium energy, they become bomb dogs. And if they're lazy, they're like, that's the perfect therapy dog, because we need it to lay around most of the day and not move. So
Right.
But then when it goes home, this story was interesting, it just goes crazy and wants to run around.
So that's the amount of training that goes into the dog. Like they know when they put on the therapy vest that like that's their job time, and they actually change their personality. The officer said he took the dog home, and it would just jump up on him and play with the other dogs like a normal dog would. So it's really interesting.
So this is just the cost, and Katie's gonna hand out, this is from that Extreme iCanine, and it just talks about it's $5,000 per dog and the training. And then when we bring down the caretaker, it would be $2,000 for flight for the caretaker as well as room and board. That's the big reason why we wanted to get someone local. We were trying to find someone local because of that cost. The investment per dog per year, we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. You can see there's a warranty, a 12-month warranty. If it's not working out, they'll give us a different dog. You can see it on the back too, ownership responsibilities, as well as there's a handler's course for the handlers that we'll have. Because it won't be just the caretaker, you'll see that in a little bit too.
So we had reached out to some local individuals, and Dr. Mary Kresge is willing to donate $1,000 a year for the dog for like food, haircut, supplies, kennels, because they need to have 3 different kennels one at each of our schools. The Cronin-Water Veterinarian Services, they said that they would provide free services for our therapy dog, which is very, very generous. Reached out to other local food vendors to see if they would provide any food for free or at a discounted rate for the dog. And then the PTO at the elementary, middle, and high school, so we all have our PTO funds that we would donate the remaining costs, approximately $7,000 for the remaining fees. Who will work with the dog? The dog owner would be the Mosinee School District, and our caretaker, who's in the audience tonight, Mrs. Christy Held, would be willing to donate her time to have the dog outside of school hours. So she'd be responsible for taking it home with her, bringing it to school, taking it to appointments, everyday necessities, and if she would ever leave the district, she could not take it with. It would stay with the district.
So the question when I called iCanine, I said, okay, this is different than Wausau, where the police officer has the dog 24/7 as well as works with the dog at school. That's not the way we would have it. When the dog comes to school, Officer Krause would be the lead trainer. Because Officer Krause will go from building to building, has that flexibility, as well as we have other handlers, which is on here. So our school counselors would also be handlers, our principals and our sites would be handlers for the dog. And then at the end of the day, Christy takes the dog back home.
So really, the whole purpose of this whole thing is we want to let you know that this is a pretty big experiment for us. Now we have done some research and we've talked with Officer Barnes and his team members up in Wausau and have seen what they've done with their dogs. But we know it's going to be an experiment, so we also had to look into some other things, like our current policy on animals on district property. And currently, we do allow therapy dogs within the district under our current policy. So we would not have to change any board policies in order to bring a therapy dog here. We also looked into the liability issue within our district, like does our district, would we be able to cover insurance if something happened to the dog or something happened with the dog. And we talked with Brent, and Brent looked up, talked to our insurance guy and assured us that our insurance does cover the liability of a dog within the district. But then there's always the questions of like, well, what if there's an allergic student? What if there's a student that's just like deathly afraid of dogs? How do you handle that? And so we talked with the officers from Wausau about that. And basically what it boils down to is we have pretty extensive records within our district health offices of who has allergies. And we would also make sure that we knew specifically within our buildings if there were students that had allergies. And the recommendation from Wausau Police Department was they know which kids are allergic to dogs and which kids aren't. And those kids also know, like if the dog is coming down the hallway, I'm not gonna go running up to the dog and try and pet it. So we've talked about those things. We would do a thorough background check of all the students within our district, talk to parents, and do those things. But also know that the dog doesn't go into a room unless the handler asks first, is it okay if the dog comes in? So if there's a kid in the room that's destroying things and is freaking out, we're not just gonna throw the dog in there and close the door. It's typically you ask, hey, is it okay if the dog comes in? You're not gonna hurt the dog if it comes in, those kinds of things. And if they say, yeah, I'm gonna hurt that dog, the dog doesn't go in there. So there are protocols that would be in place for how to handle that situation. But on top of that, our dog would have to go to other events. So it wouldn't just be working during the school day. It would go to summer school. It would go to school events like sporting events and like one-act plays and band concerts and all kinds of different things. And then community events during the summer as well. So the dog would not just be kind of a school thing. It would be a community-wide thing, really, is the way we're looking at it. And we really do feel that getting a dog for our school district would be a great community relations for our district. It would bring the community closer to our schools because they would have something to kind of rally around and we could take to community events.
Josh, can I just follow up?
Yes.
One of the things you'll read if you choose to read that article or not is that Wausau East, if the student was afraid of the dog badge, they just taught the students to do this. So, because in the hallway, you might not know what kids are afraid if you are the officer, so Officer Setzer said that the kids would just do like this. So he knew that was his visual to either go to the other side of the hallway or just stay away from that student. He even said students that had allergies at East, they knew they had allergies to the dog, they still pet badge, but then they go wash their hands. So at that older grade level, they kind of knew, like I can still pet it if I just go wash my hands. So there are things in place for those two situations.
Any questions?
Yeah, the one week maintenance per year, what would that cost?
That would not, that's all within the cost of this, so we don't get any costs after the $7,000.
Okay, so that maintenance pay would be,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't see no cost.
So now that you've got this money there and ready to go, how soon would this be able to take place?
We would like to start in the summer. So Christy would go down in the summer, if that's where we choose. I'm interested in that other idea. But Christy would go down in the summer if we choose I-9, and so by the next school year, we would have a therapy dog.
Ultimately, this is our experiment time, and we talked about this, like, it would be fantastic if we had a dog at both the elementary and the middle school, high school, or 3 of them, so 1 at each. But that makes the experiment much more difficult because we don't really know what we're getting into on right now. We've done a bunch of research, but how well is it gonna work to have Christy be the caretaker and then drop it off with a handler? Do we have enough people that are willing to be caretakers if we had another dog? Those kinds of things. So we really wanna experiment with this first dog and then see where that takes us. But we ultimately would love to have more than one.
I would just add that when the first concept came up in Wausau to do this, Stetzer with the flat-coated retriever, the black one, he, unbeknownst to me, had put the dog through all the training. That's his own dog. He owns it. We own the Labradoodle. And he said, hey, I'd like to bring my dog to work. And I just laughed at him. And I said, it's not bring your pet to work life. So, no. And then they came back the next week and said, no, seriously, we want to address this. And so we conducted that experiment. So I know you're going to experiment. We've already done the experiment. And I can tell you that our schools are more than happy. Like, get us a school resource officer, but the dog stays. And it has become such an integral part of that school. It has reduced for Officer Shrimp, the one with the fuzzy dog, he doesn't have to lay his hands on kids in the school, and that happens pretty regularly. And so to me, the amount of money that they're looking at spending, which they're not asking us for, makes this, I'm telling you, the result is, it makes it a happier place. And these kids that are trashing stuff, you walk in with a dog, you're like, you can pet the dog or you can break something. And they stop breaking stuff. And the frequency at which we see additional requests for aids and for people to deal with kids who are really struggling with these emotional issues, I'm telling you that that four-legged fuzzy thing resolves those issues so fast with the majority of those kids that I believe that long-term it reduces the need for staff. And if you think about Jeff Soderberg's time or Katie's time with these kids to spend an hour, or you can spend 5 minutes with a dog, that just, to me, I'm telling you, the results have been fantastic, and I'm pretty excited to approve that.
Thank you. I've had some conversations with other principals around the area, and they've seen the increase in social and emotional problems too, and the amount of seclusion and restraints are increasing. And I told them, well, you should do what we're looking into, get a therapy dog, because of the positives at Wausau.
Again, we've been spending probably 6 weeks talking about this, and I think our administrators have tried to anticipate the types of questions you might have, but perhaps we haven't anticipated all of them. I would share with you that the entire administrative team talked about this at least 2 or 3 different meetings, and unanimously is asking board support for a therapy dog starting next year.
Also move.
I'll second.
Well, it was just a presentation.
Oh, the presentation?
Yeah, we're good, we're good.
Well, at the end of the day, they don't need our,
That is great.
they don't need our permission to move forward with this.
Nope.
I guess it just asks you to take a look at her.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
I'm asking
That was our
myself-
goal, is to hopefully find someone close by and
Yeah.
then do some research on that too.
Well, keep us up to date once you
Yeah.
get some more,
Thank you.
dig into that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Any potential action that you do take, the PTO has stepped up here, right?
Yeah.
And I think that should be also acknowledged,
For sure.
the people that have donated and organizations that donated.
Moving on to old business. 9A, discussion and possible decision, agreement for the MCA use of fields. That is also prepared a 10-year agreement for the 32 acres of land. Brent, you want to touch on that just a little bit?
Yeah, basically Bruce and I, and Bruce can't be here tonight because of a medical emergency, but him and I basically got together, used as a model our agreement we have with the Little League Association, and basically came up with what you see for agreement. Bruce is kind of the head of the MCA, and basically we have an agreement that we think will be nice. It's 10 years for the board. The big gain is the MCA will take over the operation of the fields, so we won't be mowing it. It'll basically be their facility to maintain. They'll be able to raise money for it. They'll be able to develop and hopefully make the field all grow like they wish to. And we did a 10-year agreement because we wanted to give them a period of time. Realistically, you know, it's going to stay athletic fields. I mean, if we need to develop a school, you'd probably do it on the other 41 acres. But in there, you have the provision if you want to get the land back, you could. But like I say, I think it's something nice, and it's modeled after the Little League, and it's worked good for the Little League for 30-plus years. So I don't see why this wouldn't work nice for the MCA, and the people that like baseball, football, and all the sports in town should enjoy it and hopefully develop it into a nice facility.
So what is that? If we decide that we need it for something else or something isn't being kept, we can just take it back?
Yeah, you'd have to pay, you know, I mean, if you wanted to, say you decided you needed to put a football field where the baseball field was because you wanted a new stadium or something, you'd have to pay them for the developments that they made. You know, I mean, you wouldn't be able to come in and just take the fields from the community down. You wouldn't want to do that politically, but that would be something you'd have to do. But I don't really know, Mark, why you take it from them, but, you know.
No, I mean, just if there was a reason that, you know.
I guess I don't know what the reason would be, because I think these people want to do something good and they want to develop it. But I mean, if they did say, leave it go into complete state of disrepair, you know, then you could come in, back in, and take over it, but like I say, I don't foresee that happening.
Well, I don't either, I just wanted just to hit it out.
Yeah, you'd have an out, no, definitely.
So 10 years, that's pretty long.
Well, I guess let's put it this way, when you consider the amount of money, if they develop the fields, if you said you're only gonna give it to them for a couple of years, I mean, you know, then why would they fundraise, Kevin? I guess, you know, if you don't have some type of commitment that you're not gonna take it away from them, you know, if they're gonna develop a field and you're gonna say, well, no, it's mine now, you're going to have issues trying to get people to buy in.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
How about any views of this by legal at all? Legal?
I didn't send it to an attorney.
Okay.
Quite frankly, you're dealing with your local community groups, and I mean, I think there's an element of trust. We have insurance paperwork with them. You know, we've had, like I said, good experience with the Little League, and I wouldn't see these guys, Kevin, doing anything different, especially with people like Bruce and the people that are running the youth sports. I mean, we're all in it together, because those kids all are coming to our high school. I mean, they're all local kids and local people.
So they have insurance?
They actually will have it starting December 1, Bruce said. They're getting it through John Gert.
But didn't we have a contract before, like, was it for like 20 years?
You could have it
Yeah, I
longer.
mean,
We just
right,
put,
we have.
we thought, Bruce and I thought 10 years. I
10
mean, you
years,
could
I
make
think-
it longer
right.
if you
No,
wanted.
but I mean, so 10 isn't that outrageous?
No,
No, because I think we did before, that's why we're updating this, I think we have.
Because realistically, I think, you know, this 10 years, just a segue, 10 years from now, you know, if you got a bunch of fields, I can't imagine the school says, well, we want to come back and then mow it and take
Right.
care of it. I mean, if they're doing a decent job, I think you're basically, like with the Little League, you think of Mark, I think those fields were here before I got here. You know, it's been going on 30 years. I would think this will go on, you know, long past most of our lifetimes, you know, they'll be playing ball and having fun on those fields.
I'll make a motion, we accept the bid.
Okay, we have a motion by Marcus, a second,
I'll second it.
and a second by Kevin. Further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion will carry. Item 9B, discussion only on school safety. Join that. Brady?
So just to provide you a little bit of an update on a few things, you can see through the report, our next big step is piling everything. If you take a walk by the middle school, high school, you'll see all the scanners are up. Within the last couple of days, they've been powered up. This is certainly a project that we want to get right the first time around, so I'm making sure that right now we're in the stages of the configuration of everything. So everything is installed at the middle school, high school, now we're just doing the configuration. And again, just like I mentioned at the last board meeting, the goal is to get the complex of the middle school and high school operational, and then move resources over to the elementary school, because as I mentioned before, the company doing it is like a lot of the companies, they are pushed for manpower to be able to complete all of the work that is out there right now. So we've been pretty fortunate. We've got 3 guys working on it right now, and realistically, we'll also, I know some of you might have been asked, and this is certainly a question I've gotten of when it's operational, how will it go? I fully anticipate having a soft opening, kind of that week we come back from Thanksgiving break. And by a soft opening, I mean we want to make sure everything's operational before Steve and the maintenance team goes through and starts switching locks out, because that'll be the next step of making the outdoor keys irrelevant and forcing people into it. But we'll certainly give a little bit of time to make sure everything is operational before we do that. So right
Which
now,
fingers to bend?
index fingers for most people is the,
I thought you did a middle finger.
it's some people.
Okay.
Depends what your views towards the school are, I guess.
Well, when you scanned on that thing, I thought you, I can't remember which fingers you used.
Index first and middle was the backup. So if your index finger works, that's what everybody's is. If your index finger didn't work, then it's your middle finger. So that's where we're at.
Any other questions?
Just don't leave your fingers at home.
Just wanted to let Mark give Brady the finger.
That
was coming, yeah.
I already get the tape on that one.
Moving on, discussion and possible decision, approval of the second readings of the policy 227.101, Start College Now program, policy 5870, student productions of goods and services, and policy 8407, school resource officer, and then, of course, the table policies.
Well, again, I think you've got copies of the first three. Those are presented to you exactly as they were the last time. There have been no changes, but the fact of the matter was that these were new policies, not changes to existing policies, and therefore they require 2 readings. I've not had any board members contact me or any administrators asking for changes in terms of what our Neola representative presented at our last board meeting.
So right now we're just looking for the 3.
Well, again, unless there's
They're
questions from
grouped
the
in
board,
there,
I would
yes.
ask that there be that it be approved, I guess, however you want to do
Okay.
that, as a second reading.
Right.
So unless there's some objections, these would then be sent to Neola, and they would then become part of your board policy. There's not an existing policy for any of these 3 right now. These are all brand new. That's why they're there for a second reading.
So I'll make the motion that we approve the second readings of policy 227.10, State College, and then the 5870, State Production of Goods and Service, and the second reading of 8407, School Resource Officer Program, and table.
I'll second that.
Those 3.
Okay, so we have a motion by Kelly and a second by Mark. Further discussion?
I have a quick question. If I wasn't here for the first reading, do I abstain on the second reading, or do I vote on the second reading? Okay.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion will carry. And then we're gonna take, you want to talk about the table policies, or we're just going?
Well, let me share a little bit in terms of what we've done since our last board meeting. With the vacancies, what I heard from the board the night of that board meeting is that they were looking for something far less complicated. Again, what I tried to do is to find other districts that had really simplified the vacancy part. And so what you see, the part up above, A through L, that's part of your current policy. And then the part down below where it says filling a board vacancy, all the other language, where there were, I think, 2 or 3 pages of suggestions, that has been deleted in the suggestion. Quite honestly, there's a number of districts that simply use letters A, B, C, and D. Vacancy shall be filled by the board using the following procedures, and that's, again, a very simplified policy compared to what you were looking at before, and that's why I heard the board say, we want something much simpler than what we're currently being presented. It's really appointment by the board shall be by a majority vote. All votes are recorded. The board gets to see qualified and interested candidates from the community using the news media, word of mouth, contact with appropriate organizations. The board may interview all interested candidates to ascertain their qualifications, and then appointment to the board to fill the vacancies by a majority of the board, et cetera, et cetera. So it covers what legally has to happen, and if you were looking for something simple, this is something simple.
Okay, I'll make the motion to accept the new vacancy policy 0142.5.
For its first reading?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion by Kelly and a second by Amy.
So it's just the first reading, so we have
Further
to bring it
discussion,
back.
right?
Okay.
If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion will carry.
Again, with policy 00143, authority and access to information, based on what I heard from the board at the last board meeting, I did try to get legal advice from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, some directions in terms of what they thought made sense. Tried to share with them, I think, some of the frustration that existed in the past when board members were requesting policy, but also trying to provide some flexibility for future boards and superintendents down the road. Dan Malin, M-A-L-L-I-N, I think some of you have been at his presentations. He's one of the individuals, the legal individuals at WASB, that this is sort of his area of expertise. And what you see in green is his recommendation on a policy that he felt protected both the board and protected board members who are seeking policies. The language up above in black, no member of the board shall be denied documents or information to which she or he is legally entitled to, that stays there. It then goes on to say that all open record requests approved by the board president and or superintendent shall be provided as soon as practical and without delay. What the board had originally asked was, could we put in within 10 days? And the recommendation from WASB was, don't put that number in. Most of the time, if you would look at the legal definition as soon as practical and without delay, apparently the Wisconsin Attorney General has pretty much defined that as 10 days. So when we're saying as soon as practical and without delay, 10 days is kind of the norm, but it doesn't say that in case something had to go beyond that. He then recommended that we put in some language to avoid ambiguity and confusion, where basically if a board member is requesting something, that they specify the nature under which they're requesting it. As a board member, local public official, in which case obviously there's no cost to you in terms of any materials or anything that's being provided. On the other hand, you may be requesting it as, under the public records law, strictly as an individual, even though you're on the board, or last of all, it could be in some other capacity, such as the parent of a district, etc. Again, those are the three categories that Dan recommended we include in the policy. If there's ambiguity, they said it's reasonable for the district staff to ask a board member to expressly clarify the capacity in which the request is being submitted. Could there be some type of disagreement between the board member and the district administrator? It says when an individual board member and the district administrator disagree regarding an appropriate response to an individual board member's, there's a reciprocal right. In other words, both the board member or the superintendent or district administrator would refer that issue to the next regular board meeting for a decision by or other directive from the school board. So again, if for some reason within that reasonable and practical without delay, if for some reason we can't agree as to what's happening, then it comes to the board. Could be a board member requesting direction, could be an administrator. And then last of all, what he suggested, so that nobody is sitting out there wondering what's happening, it says, for any request that is not quickly fulfilled or otherwise resolved, the district administrator will communicate to the board member making the request the status of his or her individual request within 10 working days of receiving the request. If there's something that's going to take 15 days to get everything run off, sometimes as a keeper of the records, you might have to inform an individual that these records are being sought. That individual could go to an attorney, ask for an injunction, whatever it might be. But you would let that board member know why that request is not being fulfilled as soon as practical as possible. And then last of all, in the green, something I think that we're doing right now, but something you would ask for, responses to requests for information from individual board members shall be sent to all board members by the superintendent.